Okay, so you gave us a lot there that I'll unpack over the course of the conversation. One thing that you said, which I think is a very important point, is that um, the focus on a possible threat or national security threat is a very narrow lens through which to view UAP. And yet, very interestingly, at the beginning of your new book, you start out by giving a couple dozen pages to some events in Southern California that suggest something like a threat or at least injury and maybe violence. And you had said to me before this that you thought these were very important events, and you've been struck by the fact that in over about a dozen interviews, no one had asked you about them. So maybe you could say a word about those.
It, it's I understand why people didn't spend time on that because they there are some current questions that people want to ask about, and they rush into those standard questions. Um, there are several things in this book that are not mentioned anywhere else, which are things um, that I made an effort to go and explore because I had heard or somebody had contacted me about some exceptional cases that were affecting them in their lives. And those were not reported anywhere. And a number of researchers or my colleagues and will tell you that there is a lot that people are not reporting to the media at all, either because they affect their property, their cattle, if they are farmers, and or ranchers, uh, and the reputation of their family or their reputation in business. I have CEOs of Silicon Valley companies who have said, Jacques, can we have coffee together because I'd like you to know about something that I saw, on a weekend with my family. And by the way, you can't report it. And those are precious. And this came from a family who lives in the Mojave, away from Los Angeles, and in an area which is the playground of the major aerospace companies. So it's a very often a testing ground for new things, and they love to see new aircraft and new prototypes. Those are not necessarily, I mean, they may be classified because of their performance, but you're going to see them because those prototypes can be seen over a wide area. Um, the the particular case involved something very strange. It involved discs, just like what people are reporting now as drones, except that didn't have propellers. They were large discs, about 10 to 12 feet as far as they could tell, that appeared in the sky, and they seemed to exchange light light rays, or light flashes, but it was most of the time it was mostly like a laser between one disk and another. And they thought that this may be some new weapon that was being developed. And they started in the late 70s. Now I learned of it after 2010, 2012, but that had been going on for a long time. And when one disk was hit by the beam, the disk would vanish, um, which is reminiscent of some of the things around the Nimitz and more recently that everybody has known about. It would vanish, but it would reappear somewhere else. And there were sort of structured dances among these objects. Um, this happened in the evening and at night, and I go into it at some. I went there several times, met with the people, met with their families, and recalled, what they had seen. The recollection was very interesting because they do not all remember the same things, which is, any investigator will tell you that's a classic in multiple witness cases. People are not going to tell the same story, but we could reconstruct from where they were the total observation. Um, in daylight, when they came to the site, there was a truck there with what they first interpreted as a dead body there, which may have been, uh, maybe a decoy or something else. But there was somebody setting, someone had set fire to the truck, and there was a man there who was in a uniform and told them to go home and that there was nothing to see. That, but that was at the place where those beams had been exchanged at night. So they got very scared and did not report anything. And it only came out because I happened to know somebody in that family who led me to the site. It happens that in my computer files, of course, in something like that happens, I'm going to go back to the computer and see if there is anything similar or relevant that happened in that in that time. Was a very interesting professional from Hollywood who is a high technology um, a consultant to the studios for special effects. So he has his own company that develops special effects for Hollywood, but he was also recruited by the NSA, National Security Agency, to go into the desert, into the same area of the Mojave, and this would have been in the late in the mid to late 80s, uh, to expose, and they would give him a particular set of coordinates where something would happen in orbit that they wanted him to photograph with a very, very high special infrared film. That and that, as you may know, it takes a lot of experience to deal professionally with infrared film, especially at the very, very high response index. And that was his specialty, and that was why he was recruited. There were other teams like that. And he learned that in one other team, the truck had caught fire, and both of the agents from NSA had been killed. So at that point, he resigned and went back to Hollywood. And uh, I knew him because he was involved in some research that Dr. Hynek and I did in Hollywood, in a special case where he had recorded some of the effects of the phenomenon, of another phenomenon. So when I went back to talk to him about the cases in the desert, he told me the whole story, and he said that he just couldn't continue to work. He had a family and didn't want to be exposed to that. But you have two cases involving very strange things in the sky, involving the intelligence community and the satellite community back in the 70s and 80s, with things that resulted in the death of some of the people involved in the sightings. And
So, okay.
so I had no way to investigate further, and I just recorded the information, and it's in the book.